More and more parties have been throwing their weight behind the contending parties on both sides of the divide of the ongoing debate about who between the federal government and the states that qualifies to collect the value-added tax in Nigeria. Just yesterday, governors of the 6 states of the South-South geopolitical zone met in Port Harcourt over the matter and decided to join the suit, which is already before the Supreme Court on the side of the states, the same way their counterparts from the North have settled to support the Federal Inland Revenue Service in the case. And as the potential battlefield continues to widen, what could be the end game? Well, as many analysts have voiced the opinion that the case might end up with far-reaching implications for the corporate existence of Nigeria. To explore this matter a little further, we are now being joined by a lawyer and public speaker, Yemi Candide-Johnson, a senior advocate of Nigeria. Welcome and good afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Yes.
All right, so we know about the situation. Legally speaking, what can we make of what will play out in the weeks to come with the North versus the South and the Federal Inland Revenue Service?
Okay, well, I'm not so sure it's directly a North versus South issue, but you correctly recognize that there is a political and legal aspect of this matter. The legal issue is quite simple. It's whether the states or the federal government have power under the Constitution to legislate in respect of value-added tax. That question is quite simple. Many Supreme Court decisions previously, especially those that Lagos State has taken during the tenure as Attorney General of the President, Vice President of the Supreme Court, determined that if a matter is not on the exclusive or concurrent legislative list, it belongs to the states.
Right.
But the question is more than that, because the question of VAT is one of administration. One of the questions raised is as to whether the federal government, the FIRS as it were, or any other agency is the best able to manage the collection and the distribution. But most fundamental, I think, is the political question as to how revenues derived from various parts of the country are distributed. Right. That's an issue that has been contentious since Nigeria was incorporated in 1914, and it's been the subject of successive discussions by royal commissions under the colonial government and by commissions under the Nigerian governments. The fundamental question is what to do with revenue collected within Nigeria. And there are 2 principles at play. One is the principle that, to the largest extent possible, the largest amount of revenue generated by a particular area or region should be spent there. And second, that in a federation which incorporates a wide variety of people, wide variety of peoples and territory, that there should be, as far as possible, even development.
Right.
So you can get the revenue that you collect, and the question is, how do we share it? When the federal government collects it, it determines according to its own lights. The VAT Act creates a sharing formula. And now I think the political question, which is activated by discontent with our political and social contract, is what is causing people to question the legitimacy of the sharing under the VAT decree.
All right, I would like to get your own legal perspective towards this, because we know that the Court of Appeal has actually waded into this and said that they should maintain, the FIRS and the state should maintain the status quo ante. But more importantly, my question is, what are the ramifications and implications of pouring a political fire into this very legal case?
Well, you know, as I said, it's a legal case, but this legal case is a lightning rod for a variety of political agitations. In a federation where there are different people, different states, different competing needs for resources, there will always be a contest about revenue. If the people recognize that the social contract which binds them commits them to a fair and equitable sharing formula and arrangements across the political and economic divide, then they will not be so agitated about interfering with the current arrangement. So in constitutional law, everything is political. In question of structuring, and I know that's a emotive word, structuring and restructuring, but the fact of the matter is that this dispute, this legal dispute about the allocation and the control and the levying of value-added tax is a lightning rod for those political agitations which have been provoked by inequities in our constitutional and legal arrangements.
Because if we were to press it further, because some would say that this was the position of the River State governor, especially in terms of consumption tax, that states like Kano ban alcohol, and you're yet taxing people from the South on the same alcohol, and equitably try to distribute that across Nigeria. You look at that and you say that, is there any way, is there a better way to actually work around this particular minefield? At the end of the day, businesses do not suffer, Nigerians do not suffer, and ultimately, Nigeria becomes a prosperous nation.
You know, you use the question of alcohol, and that is an emotional touch point. And when you're agitating in the political sphere, it's often effective to use touch points around which people can organize. And that is one. But for myself as a lawyer, I prefer to see things in the clearest and most simple way. It's not so much about a particular commodity. It's the political question about how you share the resources that are collected, especially if they're collected from the activity in a different territory. I prefer not to get involved in what is the action, because this question has been discussed historically. There were, even before Nigeria became independent, there were a number of royal commissions established, the last of which was the Jeremy Reisman Committee, which discussed this very question. What do you do about tin, tobacco? What do you do about alcohol? There are many issues that are beyond the question of sharing. When you deciding who administers such a tax has implications for interstate commerce, which is a federal matter. And one of the problems that was identified in the report given in 1958 before the Nigerian Constitution, before Nigeria became independent, was as to what would happen if each region was to control the sales, consumption, value-added tax, which is the sophisticated version of what those things are. Because to control them and to contain the revenue, it means having to contain economic activity within your region as far as possible. This is directly in conflict with the responsibility of the federal government to promote interstate commerce. Because if goods arrive in Apapa and they have to go to Ebonyi State, then in Ogun State, the Ogun State guy is going to ask for tax. And the guy in Osun State is going to ask for tax. And what is going to happen is that because each state is trying to extract the highest degree of revenue from the movement of those goods, because value-added tax is a tax on value added at each point. That's what it is.
Okay.
It's not ordinarily just a sales tax. So the question that will arise is what is going to happen? The administration has got to be something that is very important. It's to employ the FIRS to collect VAT is not a big deal. You can employ Goldman Sachs, you can employ Barclays Bank. The important thing is that you collect it according to a rational system, that you distribute it according to a politically equitable arrangement, and that everybody's satisfied. Who cares whether it's FIRS who collects it or TVC News or Arise News?
And is that something you think that can be done? Is that something that you think is actually going to be the solution at the end of the day, or is this just a little bit of a prolonged situation?
All constitutional questions have political solutions. And very often, contests about political questions are reconstitutional. And this is particularly so in the context of this political education for restructuring. What is happening is that you test the limits of the Constitution in order to establish your political preferences. And that is exactly what is happening here. So the question of fiscal federalism, which you mentioned at the beginning, is a rational way of distributing resources gathered within the federation between the constituent units. So the question that arises, what is the best way? What way will we accept? And what we're doing, that's why I use the expression, it's a lightning rod. What we're doing is that we're testing the limits of the law so that there will be a political solution. And if there wasn't distrust, suspicion, and a wide-scale looting of revenues gathered by the federal government, of course, not just the federal government is stealing funds from the states are stealing funds from the local governments. There's a climate of corruption and a climate of distrust. If that wasn't the case, then you would review the distribution of resources according to what is most effective for you. So the idea that you must have equal development across the federation is rational and it's progressive. This is why the federal government in many federations does things like roads, rails, because those things generate the economic progress and development of the entire country.
Right.
If that is your only consideration, then it's very easy to sit down and discuss it. Oh no, we need to have a railway in Lagos, so therefore we need to take the money from Enugu and put it here. We need to have a deep sea port in Port Harcourt, so it's very important that we apply this money for that purpose because those resources come to Lagos ultimately. That's the basic structure of this economic and political argument. But you can't really do it when you're blinded by theft, corruption, and lack of trust. And why is that lack of trust? Because the political arrangements by which we are bound are the subject of deep distrust and dissatisfaction.
All right, let's move away from
the broken down social contract and move into other lightning rod topics.
Okay, so let's talk about the open grazing policy and the controversy that has literally ensued.
Yes.
Like she was saying, also, it's almost a case of North versus South. And the Mieti Allah, the recent news is that they're trying to sue around the Lagos State on those, the Lagos State government, and Ondo has also vowed that they will ensure that the open grazing actually pulls through. And people are asking that, does this particular body, do they really have a locus? Do they really have a case here? Or is it because probably the president is from the north and is from northern extraction that probably emboldens them to do that? If the president was from the south, will the Mieti Allah would have been this vocal in pushing forth this open grazing route that they are insisting on having?
Well, you speak about what gives people confidence. That may well be the case. They may be emboldened by the fact that they have a listening ear in the highest echelons of the government. But we're asking the wrong question, not why they have the boldness, but whether their political agitation is for the better interest and benefit of the country. That is what is most important. I mean, I don't really care whether you come from a small part of the country and you want to promote the drinking of ginger beer. That's your entitlement. Anybody can agitate for what they want. The key question for the rest of us is, what is the value to us? If you say that the value to us and the progress of the nation is not important, then that's fine. That's a political position. Then we know how to deal with that. But if you say that this is my interest, I'm going to agitate for my interest, and it's in your benefit, then it's worth having a discussion about. So it's either we talk about it or we fight about it. Now, it's clear to many people that the economic value of cattle rearing is not improved to any degree by open grazing. You cannot control the health, you cannot control the feeding, you cannot control the safety of your cattle, and therefore you cannot increase the economic value of each one of those cows by roaming them from Maiduguri to Lagos, where they come with meat so tough you can barely eat it. So the question really is, how do you increase the value of your economic stock? Mieti Allah is making political statements because organization around the cultural idea of cattle grazing is great for organizing support and for building up political capital. But as far as an economic imperative, it's quite irrelevant. Countries which don't have open grazing, which ranch cattle, are the largest by far producers and exporters of high quality beef across the world. So do you want the money or do you want the political noise? I suspect that some of those people haven't thought this very carefully through.
Well,
yeah, I mean, you said earlier that these situations are created to test the political boundaries and for people to do as they will for their own political gain.
Correct.
Femi Falana has come out recently to say that the federal government is supporting the open grazing and the herders. I just want to ask your comments about that. And I mean, you already spoke about the lack of benefits of the open grazing, but just to get your comments on that.
Yeah, you know, again, it's natural to have affinity for the cultural aspirations of people that you grew up with. So if the president, who happens to be from a cattle grazing community, has sympathy, I understand that, but he's president of Nigeria, and his job is not to protect his kinsmen or villagers. His job is to promote the great economic prosperity and safety of the largest number of Nigerian people. If this is not his job, then he should be looking for the job of governor of Katsina State. That's just a simple fact. That's the only comment I have to make. Femi Falana is right that there's a great deal that appears to suggest the federal government is indifferent to the rationality and the reasonableness of this debate, and that many statements made by the federal government and some of its functionaries indicate that they support this grazing.
But the Attorney General probably thinks differently. The Minister of Justice, Attorney General, Minister of Justice thinks differently. And he thinks that the president probably is within his boundaries to actually push for this and actually support what is actually going on, because they've been talking about unearthing old grazing routes.
Yes, I think that the Attorney General himself would benefit from a deeper legal review of the questions that he has made those comments upon. He's entitled to his opinion. He's a lawyer. I was going to say he's a lawyer like me, but he's probably a better lawyer than myself.
Okay.
I don't see it that way. And I'm sure that if he takes proper advice, he would speak with authority rather than off the cuff. Again, Attorney General is the only office that is specifically mentioned by name in the Constitution. Therefore, those who made our Constitution recognize that the Attorney General was a key functionary. He is not the lawyer to the president. He is not the lawyer to his party. He's not the lawyer to his people. He's the lawyer to the Constitution, the law, and the system of justice in Nigeria. This is the function that should.
Are you saying he's misguided here now?
That's an interesting word you've chosen.
Well, on that note, we will wrap up this discussion. Thank you so much for this very deep discourse we've had this afternoon, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Yemi Candide-Johnson.